Hey nerds, in this live stream we're going to review and do a spoiler breakdown of Loki Season 2, Episode 3, titled 1893. It is written by Eric Martin and directed by Kasra Farahani, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
So we are now at episode 3 of the second season of Loki. So in the spoiler-free logline is Loki and Mobius go on the hunt to find everyone's favorite cartoon clock as they try to save the TVA. So a lot of twists and turns in this one. So Nathan, what are your thoughts about this episode 1893?
Um, I have had some mixed feelings about it when I first watched it. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually a little, it was a little overlong and for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people like the episode. I was like floating. I was thinking about giving it like a 5
Whoa.
when I watched it the first time. Um, I rewatched it and I like it a little bit better now. It's just that I appreciate Jonathan Majors an actor, and by the end of the episode, I warmed to what he was doing because
Mm-hmm.
this is like his third MCU performance, even though he's playing sort of the same person, but he's playing the same person that is like eons old. So
Yeah.
the same person who acts a little bit differently as the eons go on. Um, yeah, when he first premiered, it was like he was sort of in a completely different show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but by the end of the episode, I liked what he was doing, and I understood why he made the choices that he made for this version of this character. Um, yeah, I like the stuff with the stuff with Mobius and Loki is always great. And yeah, and I mean, without spoiling anything else, I think we mentioned last week that Kang was going to show up, or a version of Kang was going to show up, but
Mm-hmm.
other people also show up and they do a good job as well. But yeah, the well, I was going to say that some of the issues with the TVA are kind of that kind of put to the side, but they're
Mm-hmm.
also kind of driving the plot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot happens in this episode. A lot happens. There's a lot of reveals, but also still a lot of questions, even more questions.
Yeah.
This has created.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
But yeah, I think I enjoyed it more than I more upon rewatch, and also a little bit of reflection. I enjoyed it more than I did the first time I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, by the end of the episode, I was not in the sixth category. Like I said, so like Jonathan Majors' performance started a little weird for me,
Mm-hmm.
and then got better. Got better. Yeah, I enjoyed it all overall.
Okay. Yeah, I think that for me, I was really I messaged you right after I watched it, and I was like, "Wow,
Mhm.
this is really good,"
Yeah.
and I was really surprised at the range of Jonathan Majors' acting skills. I think that he did kind of overdo it. I mean, some people might perceive it as over the top, but I
Mhm.
kind of like the if you've seen At Me and of the Wasp, Quantum Mania, it's a totally different character that
Mhm.
he's playing here than he is before. So I like that the fact that he was able to kind of have that range of different characters playing almost the same guy, different character. I thought that there was another character that reappeared that we saw from season 1. That was we're not going to spoil it here, but spoil it in the spoiler review. But I think that character was really good. I think that it was in a time it was a timepiece as well, so it was like really cool in that way that they were presenting itself in that it spent majority of that period in this time period. So I think that in a lot of ways the they up the stakes. They up the stakes, and also the characters kind of up their games as well. So like the acting is a lot. I think it's just got upped into a whole new level because I think that there was a lot of interplay between very talented actors who played their characters really really good. And even as a spoiler free logline says, we see the return of Miss Minutes, so it's like that's also really really cool to kind of see her character in a lot more in depth than say what we saw before in season 1. So I think that because of that, I'm not going to give my reading right now, but I think because of all these different factors, I would tend to kind of lean toward a high rating. But I'll let everybody know, the audience know what the rating is in a few minutes. But that's kind of like my initial thoughts about spoiler free thoughts about the whole episode. So yeah. So Nathan, what do you think of the rating? So you kind of gave a hint about what it was.
Yeah, so like I said, I started. What did I say? A 6 or a 5, something like that. That's where I started at the beginning of the episode. And also like near the middle of the episode, but it got better. Like a lot of people show up. There's just like a lot of people in this episode, and it's very long.
Yeah.
But I think that like Jonathan Majors' performance ultimately grew on me, and I appreciated what he was doing, and not just appreciated it from like a technical point of view, like appreciated it from it's so technically good that I'm not really thinking about him performing now. I'm actually thinking of is this like as a separate person, um, um, with his own sort of like quirks and foibles. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it went from like 5, 6 to like 8. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think that because the last 2 episodes I went with an 8. I think that I was very tempted to give it a 10. I think that the performances were that strong, so I I think that I'm just gonna give it a 10 because I think that for me, the first impressions of it was like really strong because of Jonathan Majors and because of the performances, Sylvie, Loki, Mobius, and then the new and then our and then a new character, Miss Minutes. It's like everyone was kind of like hitting their notes and like sticking their landings, and even the plot was like kind of like very, it kept going. Like the plot kept moving, and yes, there was a lot of questions at the end of how this is going to all play itself out. But like there was not much action, but it was tense. It was a very tense feeling that you got from the characters, running around. What are the plots? What are the plot points? What are their intentions? And then at the end, it's like, wow, it's just because of all that stuff, of all that chasing and stuff like that. I think that for me, I have to kind of give that high of a rating a 10. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of in terms of the episode. Yes, it was long, but I think that it needed that breathing room for it to kind of grow, and I think that I just kind of like from there I just kind of like went with it.
Yeah, like I said, I got
Yeah.
I warmed on the episode, but I don't think I can get all the way to like renting a theater for it. It's,
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit too high for me. But yeah, I like it enough that I think a road trip makes sense. Like
Okay.
I could go and see this in a theater if I had the opportunity. I wouldn't be too upset with that
Right.
decision. Um, but yeah, it's yeah. I think I'm good with an 8. But I appreciate I appreciate that you really really liked it.
Oh yeah.
Rent out a theater and show it to the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like I said, it was funny because I had a friend of mine that said, "Oh, have you watched Loki yet?" And second season. I'm like, "Yeah, I've been watching because I've been doing the reviews." And he's like, "Yeah, I should check it out." And I was like, "Yeah, it's actually pretty good." So,
Yeah,
and it's
the season has
also,
been pretty
yeah.
good.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I mean, it's still the. I mean, for me, it's still the top Disney Plus show, Marvel Disney Plus show so far for me, and
hmm
it's really has stayed that way. Despite all the noise on the internet about it. So, in any case, that's kind of
yeah.
my initial thoughts. So, any other thoughts before we get into spoilers?
No, let's get into it. It's really difficult to talk about because, like I said, it's very long and there's a lot of characters that pop up that didn't show up in the first 2 episodes. So it's difficult to talk about it without spoiling it, so we should get into it.
Okay. So if you like what we have to say about Loki here, please like, share, and subscribe, and for more content like this. And it really helps us out. And thank you so much for your support. Spoilers ahead. Okay. So I'm going to get right to the screenshots here. So we go back in time, basically. And so, the title of it kind of says it all, 1893. So this was actually, I think,
1868.
Yeah, this was like about 20 years before the title.
25 years.
Yeah, 25 about years, the title. So we see in this episode where it's like, I think it's still like Chicago at that time.
Chicago, yes.
Yeah. And this is a branch timeline, I think it was, that they said it was?
So they started on the So in 1868, Renslayer showed up to the sacred timeline in 1868. But what she does here creates a branch timeline. Yeah. So what she did was basically give the TVA handbook, official TVA handbook that you saw with Casey and Ouroboros before, and so he gave him that knowledge, and it was like gave it to Victor
Timely. Exactly. Gave young Victor Timely here the knowledge and stuff. So he's like looking down at the book, and he's like, he thought at this time that it was like some sort of magical, like, heaven sent type of thing going, like guardian angels taking care of him and stuff like that. And it was very interesting to kind of see it from that perspective. Like, we've seen time travel before, and we've seen like kind of like these things tend to happen and stuff. And so this is kind of like the origins of like, and it reminded me in a lot of ways, like Mr. Sinister's character, Nathaniel Essex, like from the 1800s. And so he was like this guy from the 1800s, and like, mild mannered guy, and just became like this, and also reminded me of Harry Potter with Voldemort.
Being chosen, or sort of like
exactly. So it kind of reminded me of that, kind of like the origins of the villain in some way. So I found it very intriguing in that sense, in a lot of ways. So that's where it ended up. So we then find that that Loki and Mobius were able to kind of track down where Renslayer was, and they went back in time to 1893 here. And so there is I think it was like a World's Fair or something like that. It was.
This is the World's Fair.
World Columbian Exposition. That was what it was.
I mean, they stop off at 1868 first, and they don't see her, and then they go to 1893, and this is the branch timeline.
Right. This is the branch timeline, and so this is a nice interplay between Mobius and Loki here about Cracker Jacks. So it's like really interesting.
And also Norse gods.
Yes, it was Norse gods. Yes, what was the other character that was in the
Balder the Brave?
I think so. Yeah, they had Odin and Thor. It was like so interesting.
Odin and Thor and Balder. Balder actually shows up in the comic books, but he hasn't shown up in the MCU yet. But this is a branch timeline, so maybe Balder does exist in this timeline, or this is a hint to Balder showing up in the future in the MCU, because Balder is actually one of Thor's brothers. So, but in the movies, it was only Loki. So
right.
I guess we'll see whether or not Balder shows up. In the MCU proper.
Right. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting interplay between the two, and like kind of see all that all the interplay. Go ahead.
Actually, as an aside, Daniel Craig was supposed to play Boulder in Multiverse of Madness. He was supposed to be one of the people in the chairs, and he dropped out at the last minute. So in that timeline, there was a Boulder. So maybe there wasn't a Loki in that universe, but there is a Boulder. So that was Thor's brother in that time, or it was supposed to be anyway.
Got it. So we then kind of find that they were able to kind of track down Renslayer, that she was in the audience somewhere, and just this is the part where I think Loki was trying to kind of try to get to her, and Mobius like, no, let's just kind of like see what happens and things like that. So again, very interesting to kind of see like the machinations of their choices kind of as they play out in the show. And that's what I was talking about in the spoiler free review, is like, okay, what if he did kind of rush at him? What would be the response be? Would they be able to meet with Timely or not? And all sorts of kind of possibilities popped in my head, and like that, just one little choice of him saying okay, restrain yourself, don't go just yet. So again, these type of choices again makes war timelines and branch timelines and things like that. So it's interesting to kind of see that in play. And you see here, we get to see the debut of Victor Timely here, with his temporal marvels. So, this is now fast forward to 25 years from the beginning of the clip. And we see that, he has these kind of like really temporal marvels, and you can sense that he's kind of like almost a man out of time in some ways, because he's read the handbook and he's kind of like creating all these inventions. I think this was going to be like part of the invention
loom,
for the loom. Yeah.
So
yeah.
He's creating all these inventions, but they don't work because he doesn't have he's one person, so he doesn't necessarily have the manufacturing base to manufacture the technology that he needs to make these ideas work. There's the stuff that's required to actually do technology in like the modern age. You really need like an industrial plant and a lot and lots of clean rooms and and a lot of labor to create some of the things that we take for granted in our modern technological age. And he doesn't have those things available to him in the 19th century.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's just amazing in a lot of ways. I think there I don't have an image of this, but we see later on that he had like a refrigerator inside the chair, and I was like that's like Back to the Future Part 3. It's like that. I mean, just like these type of things. It's like these little nuggets. I just kind of appreciate it because he is a man out of time, and he has all this like kind of deep knowledge about the future. And he can't really do anything about it because he's limited. And it also reminds me of Tony Stark's father, when from Iron Man 2, he had the same problem of man limited by his technology of the time.
Also a World's Fair, I think it was World's Fair, and so we see a World's Fair in Captain America, the First Avenger, and we also see one inside of I guess there's a Stark Expo that's similar to the World's Fair, and I think Iron Man 2.
Right, so, exactly. So it's all these things kind of tie in. I just kind of like this type of visionary type of thing, and it kind of got me attracted to the character. Got me hooked because I'm like, wow, this is really cool stuff. That type of sort of thing. So yeah,
it was interesting to see him. Like I said, this is the point where it was a little bit weird to me, the way that he was speaking, very stilted and awkward. But it was also interesting to see the reaction of the audience in the 1900s of a black guy talking, and the guy, even one of the guys said, questioned him and called him boy.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. And and who knows what the history's like, in this branch timeline. And
I don't know if him getting the book could change the history of America. So he still seemed to be. I mean, they were listening to him because he was actually producing something.
Right.
But his initial reaction of seeing a black guy, they weren't very warm to him. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that kind of plays itself as well with him like selling this for like $1,000, and then it's like, oh, and then there was another guy that came and said, oh, you've swindled me and stuff. So he's kind of a huckster, a swindler, but at the same time, he is a genius in some ways. I think that because of all those multi-layers you're talking about, and I think that yes, it did kind of affect me in terms of stuttering and stuff, but I think it was part of the whole feel of the character in a lot of ways.
It wasn't clear to me that he was that he was talking like that because he had a stutter until later on in the episode. It just seemed like he was acting weird. Yeah. So yes, in retrospect, looking back at these scenes, he was talking in this very affected way because he has a stutter.
Right.
And if you have a stutter, maybe this is something that's the way you might talk to try to get over the stutter, because he didn't really stutter on screen. He was just talking at a weird cadence. Maybe and if someone has a stutter, maybe that's what he did. I mean, if you think of someone during that time period, there isn't necessarily a lot of things to help you with your stuttering, like speech pathologists or things like that. So he had to figure out a way to get over it his own way, and the way he got over it is by having this weird cadence. So he didn't stutter, but it was still a weird stilted cadence, and that was what threw me off at first. But when you figured out later on that he actually had a stutter, this made more sense.
Got it. And so we see here that, Sylvie, then, we saw her last at the McDonald's, kind of like you were saying last week, that she was plotting and thinking. And yes, she was actually plotting and thinking and trying to track down Victor Timely to kind of, again, prevent things from happening almost. And so again, there's this interplay between Sylvie and Loki, like both of them trying to save the TVA, but using different methods and intentions on how to do it, not agreeing on that. Go ahead.
Right. I don't know if she's trying to save the TVA as much as she doesn't want Kang to take over again. And yeah, it's and I mean, we'll get to this at the end, but like, it's interesting how the decisions that she makes at the end, I think partly because, and this is where I say that Jonathan Majors' performance won me over. When she's cornering him at the end, I think what she saw in him was a little bit of her and herself. So yeah. But anyway, didn't mean to.
Yeah, this is kind of like
we'll get there.
Yeah, this is kind of nice action scene here, but definitely a lot less than you saw in the previous couple of episodes. But again, it was like, the tension is there, and and you get to kind of, again, look at and analyze the choices that these characters make, which makes a very fascinating episode. So you see here again, I think this part was this is probably back when she was in the audience and stuff like that. I think that her reappearance definitely, she's trying to align herself with Victor in a lot of ways, kind of like be by his side. And it's just interesting because in the comics they were an item. So it's like, in a lot of ways it's like kind of like reliving the comics in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they're linked in the comics. They're lovers, but they're never able to actually connect because of time shenanigans. So yeah, they're always disconnected by something in time, and they're never able to actually be together in the comics, but they search for each other.
Yeah, and you can tell also because because of that recording that was back in, I think, the first episode where he was like admiring her and stuff like that, and then she now knows about it. Then she has to go back in time to kind of like rekindle that in a little way. So it's like kind of like these time paradoxes that are happening in some ways. So yeah, very fascinating, kind of like the twists and turns, and we'll see that again later on. Those twists and turns, and here they go back to kind of his hideout, and it's like Chinese themed, which is kind of really interesting kind of choice there. That's a Chinese type of theme, and so you see that they have they're hiding out, and he says that they have a boat and that they go to it because his headquarters is not actually in Chicago, it's actually Wisconsin, and it was like very
for
cheap.
Tax purposes, yes.
Yeah, for tax purposes. And I'm like that's really interesting that they kind of put that in there in a lot of ways. So yeah, definitely. And so again, this was kind of weird. This is where it kind of like got a little weird for me in that the Miss Minutes is kind of, again, behind the scenes in a lot of ways, like trying to help Renslayer, but with her own self-interest in mind, and then kind of convincing Victor to kind of kick her out of the boat and stuff like that. Yeah. And then having this kind of like love obsession with Victor, and Victor's like, what's going on here? Which kind of freaked him out in a lot of ways. Like, ooh, this is really freaky. You're saying that this type of stuff. You're not an inanimate object, from AI and stuff like that. Like way ahead of my time. Like, I don't know what he thought of it.
yeah, it's unclear what he thought of it, she acted like a crazy person. Um, first, it was really interesting how she was just watching the situation and how jealous she was,
Yeah.
and how and like and the digs that she would give him, like sorry, the digs that she would do towards Renslayer, like when Renslayer said that she was the one who brought the book, he was like, "Yeah, you brought it. Like the postman brings the mail. You didn't really. It wasn't you who sent it. So like, yeah. So and then when Renslayer said about partnership, she smiled because she knew that he was gonna react poorly to the partnership thing.
Right.
But it's interesting that she understood that. But like when they got to his lab, she's like, "I want to be your girl." So maybe he doesn't. She doesn't want
Yeah.
to be her.
Yeah,
Maybe
that
she
just
doesn't want
like
to be.
took.
Maybe she doesn't want to be a partner. She just wants to be his girl. I don't. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
that just kind of it just kind of took a really sharp turn. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? It's like, okay, kind of like
Yeah,
leading him on and stuff like that. I'm like, what? Then he's like, what? Yeah, it's
it was
weird.
interesting.
Yeah, and this is the part, when they're at the warehouse, where they had to, Loki's there, Mobius is there, Redslayer's there, trying to, and then Sylvie kind of showed up to kind of see what the choices are, the kind of like an ultimate kind of choice that they had to make, and like you said earlier, Nathan, about how Sylvie kind of started making the choice of basically letting Victor go, and
Hmm.
and basically looking at it from the standpoint of, like you said, seeing a bit of herself in him, and
Hmm.
kind of letting, again, both of them to go back to the TVA. And I don't think it was so much like people would say. I would think that Loki would have some kind of charm to like convince her, but I think that she's well beyond that. She's not like that
I
anymore.
mean, I
Yeah.
think if Loki had charm to convince her, he would have been able to stop her from killing the original who
Right.
remained. I think she has some affection for him, but she had been running for like thousands of years, so like she's very convinced of her mission. And she wants some self determination, and she thinks that he who remains doesn't want self determination. So she wants to, like, she's a variant. She shouldn't exist in his view of the world. So like yeah. So I think she very much couldn't necessarily be convinced by anyone else. She was convinced by herself. I think she
Mm-hmm.
saw that this variant was very much like her, like a
Right.
variant like herself.
Right.
And he was basically begging to say, my heart is different. I am different. I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what she was trying to say. Like I am a different person. So yeah,
Right.
I think that's what got through to her. Ironically, timely got through to her, not Loki.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
yeah.
And then, toward the end, you see the prototype of the time stick and stuff like that. And again, this is the part where where they're trying to convince Sylvie to kind of let them go, and they again go back in the TVA, but we don't see, I didn't have a screenshot of this, but we don't see that, Sylvie in some ways is able to get some sort of kind of revenge against Renslayer, and Renslayer got
Yeah,
kicked through the door to the end of time. you
and if
know,
you remember, she hates he who remains because he's the one who set this whole system up. But
right,
Renslayer specifically was a hunter. She was the hunt before she became she took control of the TVA as one of the lead. She was a hunter
right,
thousands of years ago. The hunter that actually took Sylvie in.
right.
Um, so she has a specific hate for her. And she
Yeah,
yeah, she said she wouldn't kill her. She thought about killing her. I think what her ultimate decision was that she thought about killing her in terrible ways, but like that was just letting her like live rent free in her head. So
right.
she decided to banish her to the end of time, since she wants to be with he who remains so much she can be there with a dead corpse. So yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and and then that's kind of where the episode left off. And again, it kind of opens up more questions, like you said, the spoiler free part. Like, what's going to happen with all these characters as we go
what's gonna
along? Yeah,
what's gonna happen with all the characters? I Kang said, or He Who Remains at the end of last season said that he was from like the far future, the 31st century.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, how is this person in the past? Is he like reincarnated several times? Like,
Right.
like did he lie? Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Kang, like, I mean, he's a villain, so I guess he could lie.
Right.
Or is it just like a behind the scenes thing, and they decided to just retcon what he said and say that he came from the past? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely lots of questions, especially at the very end where Miss Minute says that I have a secret, but it's going to make you mad when it's a Renslayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Keeps you guessing, but it keeps you want to watch. So
yeah,
So we're already kind of again halfway through the season.
this is halfway through. Yeah.
Yeah, halfway through. So we'll hopefully get some more juicy details as we go along. But any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just looking forward to seeing. Hopefully, these things are answered. Hopefully, it's not like the end of Ahsoka where it was a good episode, a good season, but like there are a bunch of unanswered questions at the end. Hopefully, we get. I understand like this is going to go into Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty and stuff, but I like some of these questions to be answered. Hopefully, so yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if you like what we have to talk about with Loki, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you in the next one. All right, guys. Have a good one.